The Miami Heat go into Boston and take down the Celtics. Game one, up in the series. What else is new? The Heat have now won game one openers on the road in 3 series in a row, at Milwaukee, at New York, at Boston. They're the 5th team to ever do it in NBA history. The 99 Knicks, who had a much different situation with a shortened season. We've been over that before. They were only 6 games behind the 1 seed, lost to the Spurs in the finals. And then the 81 Rockets, if you go back and look at how weird that was for the Rockets for a couple of years, and then they lost in the finals. So Miami continues to do the impossible. And yes, I picked Boston. I picked Boston because I figured they would slowly figure this out, and I just think the team is better. And Miami is challenging all of those things. They continue to challenge it. So I'm going to do a bunch of Jimmy Butler stuff here at the end and present a theory on Jimmy Butler that feels almost impossible to do that he's accomplishing. He's doing something right now that I actually think is impossible. Before we do that, I want to run through the fourth quarter for Jason Tatum. It was Miami shooting. It was a shot making. I even thought there were some stretches defensively where it looked like Boston was going to be fine. In the second quarter, when Boston went on a little bit of a lead, I was like, okay, this is normal. And then Miami scores 46 points in the third quarter. And while it was happening, because it felt like it happened with such of a flow, and there was no Missoula timeout, which people are obviously very upset about, which I would agree with on that one. At some point, just break it up. 46 points in a quarter for the Heat is a playoff record. And as it was happening, you were like, wait, how many did they score? And then you go back, you're like, look real quick. I also, by the way, had a weird situation at the hotel room where, of course, my TV went out on a few channels, and one of those channels was TNT. So I had to watch it on the feed because I couldn't log in somehow. So I watched not all 22, but I watched the all 10. So I'm behind the basket watching. And in a way, it actually gives you some good perspective on how teams do stuff and how they want to attack. There's all nat sound. Although when Marcus Smart looks like he's injured and going to the tunnel, they kept the camera on Marcus Smart, and I missed like 3 possessions. So that was awesome. But part of the talking points for this morning, Tatum, no field goal attempts in the fourth quarter. Now, when you hear that, you think a lot of things, right? Especially if you didn't watch the game. You're like, wait, this dude? Thought we just got through this. Remember the 1 for 24 combined first half start against Philadelphia in games, what was it, 4, 5, and 6? Like, that's impossible. 1 for 24. Like, how do you do that? He closes out Philadelphia in game 6 with hot shooting, then carries it over and has the best score in game 7 in playoff history. So you're like, okay, things feel good. Then you hear that, right? And if you weren't watching closely, and there's things that I miss depending on what I'm looking for, but if you weren't watching closely, you may go like, wait, Tatum had 0 field goal attempts in the fourth quarter? That seems bad. Was he not up for it? Was a Russillo guy a little more hardened? Is he going to crush him for it? Because that happens all the time. So I went back and looked at it again. And guess what? That's a little misleading. Now, the fourth quarter was bad, and he was bad, but we'll get to it. All right, 8:06, he checks back in. It's 108-100. They push it in transition off a miss. Tatum's behind the play. White pulls the 3. Tatum wasn't even in the possession. That makes it 108-103. At 110-103, Brown misses a 3. Tatum was on the other side, not in the play. Next possession, Jaylen Brown, an early turnover. It was so early into the shot clock that Tatum was never going to have the ball. So there's 3 plays there where he doesn't look like he's involved in the play as he subbed back in, but 2 of them, he was just never going to be in the play to begin with. All right, 112, to make it 112-105, they were running this action on the left side where Tatum was setting a screen for Smart, and they were hoping to get something off of that, and they didn't. And then the announcers are even starting to talk about it because I watched it again this morning. But at this point, Tatum actually was basically just like, look, I need the ball, drives, get free throws. See, that's the thing with field goal attempts. They don't count when you're fouled, and you go ahead and take free throws. So that makes it 112-105. Then Tatum loses the basketball. Jaylen Brown recovers the loose ball like a fumble in the paint. They score a layup. It's now 114-107 Miami. Next possession, Tatum goes quick baseline drive, gets fouled, gets free throws again. So he's actually attacking a little bit more than the people today would tell you that he wasn't doing anything in the fourth quarter. That makes it 114-109. Tatum sets a ball screen, but he doesn't really set it on this one for Smart. He slips it to go one-on-one against Caleb Martin, but then Smart passes it over to Brown, who misses a three. So on that one, you could say, hey, they should have gotten it to him. He could have been really with the summary that I'm going to get to here is there's only a couple of possessions where you're like, okay, you should have gotten it to him there. And then it would have felt like you were completely forcing the issue to him in the fourth quarter. All right. Jalen drives hard, passes it out to Horford. Horford misses a three. Tatum is on the other side. There's an offensive rebound. Horford gets it again, throws it to Tatum, but it's an awful pass. And this is where Jimmy Butler turns into Ed Reed and starts picking off all these passes in the middle of the floor. You want to know why? Butler is smart and he's good and he's playing the passing lanes. Collectively, from this point on, the Celtics passing was atrocious. The next play for Boston, it's still 114-109. I thought this was the play of the game. Tatum gets switched onto Max Strus. Strus has got him one-on-one at the top of the key, and Strus locked him up on this possession. Tatum couldn't get by him, couldn't get free for a three, which is very rare. I mean, we just had Larry Nance Jr. on about this one. Like, if Tatum wants to get that separation because he's comfortable stepping back or fading away, even leaning back a little on threes, it's just a really tough shot to deal with. And Strus didn't give him a driving angle, stayed upright, stayed in front of him, didn't foul, didn't reach, and then still got to the point where Tatum didn't really know how he wanted to get the shot off. So guess what Tatum does? Theme here, awful pass to the middle of the floor for Jaylen Brown, stolen by Jimmy Butler. All right. At this point, Jimmy Butler's going to be like, hey, do these guys suck? What's going on here? It's 114-108. Brogdon drives, gets free throws. It's 114-109, excuse me. Brogdon makes 1 or 2 free throws, so it's still a 4-point game. 117-110. Tatum decides he's going to start picking up the aggression here, but he gets stuck on the left side. The play was absolutely for him, and he travels. He just travels on the baseline. All right. That's not a lack of shooting. That's just a bad turnover. Brogdon drives. Next possession. Al Horford, offensive rebound, kicks it out to Tatum. Tatum travels again. Didn't know what he wanted to do. He was behind the 3-point line, kind of thought he wanted to take a three, decided to change his mind. He lifted both feet. I looked at it again this morning. Both feet were off the ground. It's a travel. It's the right call. It's a bad turnover. Another one for him. Smart layup makes it 120-112 Miami. Then Tatum goes to drive versus 3 guys, 2 collapse on him. He gets fouled. I thought it was a bad foul call. More free throws, kind of a bailout, hits 2 more free throws. So the box score says 0 field goal attempts in the fourth quarter for Tatum. What really happened here was 6 free throws, 2 travels that were terrible. He had a bad pass to Butler. So it's kind of 3 turnovers there. He also lost the ball that was recovered by Jaylen Brown in the layup. So you could argue it's 4 turnovers. Horford was trying to pass back to him 1. That was another turnover. So this wasn't really about him being out of the offense. It's actually worse. He was in the offense more than people realize. He just was really bad. So let's talk about turnover rates. Of the 16 playoff teams, the Celtics are the 4th worst in turnover rate in the fourth quarter. That is bad. Let's look at Tatum and Jaylen Brown in the fourth quarter. Turnover ratio out of 100 possessions. Tatum's at 12.2. Jaylen Brown's at 13.5. Actually not terrible, okay, even though the team collectively is turning the ball over a lot. We saw it against Atlanta. We saw it against Philly. And you saw it last night. If Miami is going to shoot the way they shot, and Butler's going to have those moments, and you're going to turn the ball over for him and make it that easy, you're going to lose this series, and Miami's going to be playing for an NBA title. All right? So as I look at the Jaylen and Tatum fourth quarter turnover rates, although not like alarming off the charts bad, there's other really good players that have some that are worse, that are other players that are better than them. It's not great. It's not the end of the world. The difference here, though, is Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. This is a staggering number. His turnover ratio per 100 possessions is 4%. 4 times out of 100, he's turning the basketball over. That is taking care of the ball. Let's stay on Jimmy Butler and ask a big question here. All right, so if we keep with some of the numbers here, per 100 possessions for his team during the regular season, Butler's averaging 34 points. In the playoffs, it's over 39 points. That's 4th of any player in the playoffs right now. Behind Jokic, he's good. Anthony Edwards, love him. And Booker, who was like off the charts. All right, Butler's 4th. And that's after actually not making any threes in the second round, which I was like, is he kind of spent maybe? Sneaky tired a little bit? Nope. His usage rate in the regular season hovers around 25. In the playoffs, it's like 31, which is a lot. When you're north of 30, that's a high usage percentage. And yet he becomes more efficient. That's not supposed to happen. That's like the Steph Curry stuff early on where it's like, okay, well, look, his shooting numbers are absurd, but if he has more volume, eventually he's going to fall off a little bit. And then Curry had this year where it's like he actually became more efficient with even more volume, which is a really special neighborhood to be in. And Butler is actually doing it during the playoffs. Like, I don't like the MJ stuff for anyone, but what he did last night's like, if you're not going to let anyone have any moment that's compared to what Jordan would do during these playoff games where he would just take over. Again, I think the Steelers, Celtics made it really easy for him, but he's also smart enough to be in the passing lane, already covered. If he's not allowed to at least have the picture-in-picture 1980s high school yearbook silhouette thing with Jordan in the background and then Butler sweaty in the foreground, like then who is? Again, I'm not calling him Jordan, but like this is some real Jordan shit we're seeing here because this is what he did, kids. If you go back and watch it, if you looked at the Heat shot chart, put it side by side with Boston, you'd be like, all right, don't give me the score. Here are the shot charts. Look at Boston's, look at Miami's. Who won? You'd be like, oh, Boston. And they didn't because this is what's happening here. Michael Pina of The Ringer, great tweet last night. Miami shot quality around 45%, right? Tracking data. How open are you? How many were contested? What kind of shots were you actually taking? All that kind of stuff. Like their shot quality wasn't off the charts last night. It was less than 45%. The problem for the Celtics is the effective field goal percentage was like 63%. So it was plus 18 better than like what you would have thought. And the crazy thing is they already outdid that in game one against Milwaukee. So like some real stuff's happening here as they continue to win on the road. But I want to finish with this. Well, let me finish with this also. It's game one. It's game one. I mean, look, we saw the Clippers win game one against Phoenix. We saw the Warriors lose game one against Sacramento. I actually really was impressed with LA hanging in that game one in Denver, to be honest with you, because it started really bad. And even though I think every team kind of makes up some space in a basketball game, I don't think there's many teams that would have responded as well as the Lakers did in Denver, considering how that game started. So there's other teams that have won game one that ended up going ahead and winning the series. Again, Miami's a perfect example of that. But think about who Butler's becoming. He is a player without rings becoming way more popular than players with rings. He is somebody that somehow is in a different category. And this isn't a knock. It's not a criticism. It's a compliment because of how rare it is. Jimmy Butler doesn't get shit that guys with rings get. I didn't even think that was possible until I started thinking about it this morning. There's more dudes dogging Kevin Durant with 2 rings, and I get why, than there would ever be for Jimmy Butler. And that's the Jimmy Butler category. I don't think there's younger players, fine. I don't think there's any player that's been around as long as Jimmy Butler and has one finals appearance where I don't really think they had much of a chance to beat the Lakers a few years ago. And it's all okay because that's how special it is and how great this Miami story is, considering how we look at their roster, certainly how I look at their roster, and I think how non-Heat fans look at their roster. To have this high of approval rating without the history that we demand of the other stars is a pretty remarkable feat on top of everything else he's doing every night.